Right, we've got a new presentation here to put up. This is for the people who attended my seminar in Whakatane on the 16th of December 2021. Unfortunately, our video projector didn't work, and so the ones at the front could see the computer, which is very small, but no one else at the back could see the presentation that I'm putting up here. Now, a lot of this stuff I've already put up on YouTube, but some of it is new, and hopefully it'll be informative, and especially to the ones who attended the seminar. So here we go. What if everything we have been taught is wrong? What if up is down, down is up? You see, there are two sides to the ledger. There is a private side and there is a public side. We only got taught the public side of the ledger. So I'm delving my way through website after website, looking for the history online and trying to bring it to you in a manner that's quite easy to understand. So they also give it to us in movies and in the Bible and things like that. They teach us. But the way they've taught us to look at these things is to use it as entertainment, or the ministers teach us to read the Bible in a very, very different way to what it's supposed to be. So one of my favourite go-tos is the Pirates of the Caribbean, where Johnny Depp finally finds what is the real thing. Watch this.
Not sunset. Sundown. Rise. Up. What's that? What is that? What do you say? Where? There. Ship! He's on to it. He's wrong. Shit! Right onto the mast, upside down when the boat flips, will we go that way up? I'm back on this fire!
Well, there you go. Now, he discovered that up was down, down was up. And all these clues are also in the good book. So I'll probably teach you a different way to read it than what the ministers do. Now, in the beginning, the world was without form. The way that we've been taught in the good book may be different, because I think what happened was our Father filled out of form. Okay? What did that do? That put us into the system, trapped within a system that we know nothing about. And how did they do this? Once again, by educating us in the public fool system. Now, the elite don't go to a public fool system. They go to a private elite school where they get taught very, very differently. They use gematria and all sorts of different codes to talk to each other. They talk to each other openly in tweets and in videos, and we don't understand their system because we haven't been taught it. So I'm slowly breaking it down bit by bit. They hold title over us from registration, and once again, this is in the good book, where the people asked for a king, and he said, "This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you." He told them they didn't need a king, but they demanded a king, so they gave him a king. And if you go down to number 15, "And he will take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants." So they were telling us that they were taking a tenth of everything. If you read that correctly, then this will become clear. Possession is 9/10 of the law, but the other tenth is title. You see, they separated us at birth between the born and the birth. Okay, the living is on one side and the dead is on the other side with a title. So how did they do that? Because, I mean, look at that cutesy little thing. No way that he's dead, but he's going to act as the dead person all his life by using that instrument on the right-hand side there, the deed, the title. The deception is unending. If you have watched The Matrix, you will find that the deception goes on and on and on, and believe me, I have delved through it and found out that we are property. A person who is 18 years or older but under 20 may do one or more of the following: execute a deed, appoint an attorney, or do or act or thing that the person himself or herself can do, accept appointment or act as attorney. Okay, now what happens? Did you at age 18 execute a deed, or did you do like everyone else, make an election to have a representative? Did you appoint an attorney in the House of Representatives to do things for you so that you could vote? Because if you did, the power of attorney by election, and the chief attorney is the Attorney General. Okay, they're all in charge of us because we elected them to act on our behalf. So we have to take that power away from them if we want to move into the private side of the ledger. But also, if we are voting, we are doing an illegal practice, which is personation. Every person is guilty of a corrupt practice who commits or aids or abets, counsels or procures the commission of the offence personation. Every person commits the offence of personation who votes as some other person, whether that person is living or dead or is a fictitious person. Okay, so we know that we are, when we use the Father's name, that we are a fictitious person. So we're voting in the name of a fictitious person and are guilty of personation. Wouldn't that rip your undies? How on earth did we get conned into such a system? By tricking us into believing they had authority to. We got it drummed into us at the public fool system that we had to do as we were told, by allowing us to vote and registering for privileges. So instead of travelling around freely in our cars and buses and trucks, they conned us into believing that we had to register for a licence. And the moment we do register for a licence, we become a driver, not a traveller. And when we register as a driver, drivers get all sorts of penalties, such as speeding and all other sorts of offences, so that they can make money. But where did this company come from? How did they get authority over us? By the Constitution Act 1986. 2. The head of state. The sovereign and right of New Zealand is the head of state of New Zealand and shall be known by the royal styles and titles proclaimed from time to time. The Governor-General, appointed by the sovereign, is the sovereign's representative in New Zealand. We'll come to the sovereign in a minute. But this is where they set up the new company in 1986. Okay, Parliament. There shall be a Parliament of New Zealand which shall consist of the sovereign in right of New Zealand. As we see from the top bit there, the sovereign in right of New Zealand is a piece of paper. So the Parliament shall consist of a piece of paper and the House of Representatives. The Parliament of New Zealand is the same body as that which before the commencement of this Act was called the General Assembly, as established by Section 32 of the New Zealand Constitution Act 1852. Okay, you can see now a bit of paper is ruling us, and then we see the royal styles and titles that they proclaimed was Her Majesty the Queen in Right of New Zealand. Now they registered that company on the Securities Exchange Commission in America. And there's the address down the bottom there. 1 The Terrace, National Provident Building, Wellington. And the mailing address, get this, care of New Zealand Debt Management Office, Treasury, Wellington. Oh my goodness. Now you need to pause here and look at all these private companies that you thought were government agencies, but they're not. They're listed either with the Securities Exchange Commission or Dun & Bradstreet. Have a look at those. Accident Compensation Corporation, Auckland Council, they're all doing business with you and taking money off you the whole time. Just to go through a bit of history that I guess some people know, but the majority of New Zealanders wouldn't know, that up until 1951 we had an upper house, or they called it the Legislative Council. You can go to the New Zealand Parliament website to get this, but it says the Legislative Council was part of New Zealand's Parliament for almost 100 years. Legislative Council was the upper house of New Zealand's Parliament until 1951. It was modelled on Britain's House of Lords. Now, it grew and grew and grew until the end there were 54 members, but stacking happened, which sometimes does happen. Okay, from 1857, governments began appointing Legislative Council members. They immediately started stacking the council, filling it with their own supporters. Okay, but in the 1940s, when the Labour government stacked the Legislative Council, the National Party argued for the council's abolition. When National came to power in 1949, it stacked the council, this time with the Suicide Squad. These members would accept the law to end the council altogether. So on the 1st of December 1950, council members linked arms and sang the national anthem before leaving Parliament for the last time. On January 1st, 1951, the council was abolished. So just a little bit of history there to see, to fill in some of the gaps that we're trying to fill in. Okay, now moving further along, we find the State-Owned Enterprises Act 1986. A lot of stuff come out in this year. The interpretation. Crown means Her Majesty the Queen and Right of New Zealand. So that is the company that is registered on the Securities Exchange Commission. So Her Majesty the Queen and Right of New Zealand is the Crown. It goes a bit deeper than that, but we'll leave it at that for the moment. Okay, so now we saw in the 1986 Constitution Act, a sovereign state is in international law a non-physical juridical entity. Okay, from Bovier's online law dictionary, sovereign, a chief ruler. Feel free at any stage to pause the presentation and just go through these so that you get a better idea. Sovereign, this is from Bovier's law dictionary, a person, body or state which independent supreme authority is vested, a chief ruler. But sovereign, a person, body or state. Well, we know that a person is an entity and a body is a dead person, so they're not hiding anything from us. So we look at state as a condition of persons. Okay, once again, just stop the video and go through that and have a good read to see what you think there. Now, this private for-profit company has its own language. Now, these are few of the dictionaries. The three up the top there are the Butterworth's New Zealand Law Dictionaries, 7th, 8th and 9th editions there. This is only a small collection. There are so many. There's one of them there is Black's Law Dictionary, but there's also dozens of other law dictionaries out there. It has its own police force, judges, etc. And the language is very tricky. If I asked you what correct was or correction, I know the answer you'd give me, but not in their language. It means discipline or chastisement. So you need to be very careful, or we need to be very careful of how we use words. Now, the Constitution Act 1986, the World Court declared it unconstitutional. So they quickly enacted the Imperial Laws Application Act 1988. And this website here is the parliamentary website, which gave the company the right to operate. Okay, and it says, the most important is the principle that Parliament does not grant supply to the government for more than 1 year at a time. So, although it says here the Parliament does not grant supply to the government, there is something else that goes on behind the scenes, and that is very, very different to what that says there. And it's the Westminster system of Parliament, and this is how they get their authority to go back in for another year every time. So at the end of this year, when they pack up and leave, they cannot do anything until a certain thing happens. Now, the Westminster system is church, state, and king. So on the 25th of January, they all go up to Ratana Pa. Ratana invite them up there. Now, this is the church. They go up to Ratana. Ratana welcomes onto the marae, and Ratana gets their koha. The government gets the mandate for another year. The second thing that happens, the government gets an invite up to Waitangi. The Maori Council get their check. The government gets the mandate for another year. And then they can now open Parliament. They only need one other tick, and that's in July when they go to talk to King Tuheitia. Okay, so that's how the government or the company that's running New Zealand gets its mandate. Parliament is the supreme legislative assembly of Great Britain and Ireland, consisting of the King or Queen and the three estates of the realm, the Lords Spiritual, the Lords Temporal, and the Commons. Okay, so you can see where it is there. Now, the Legislative Council was part of New Zealand's Parliament for almost 100 years. But as we said earlier, it disbanded in 1950 and was never seen again. It was hoped the Council would prevent the House from passing laws too quickly and introduce some laws of its own. But when the Council tried to take an active role in the 1860s and 70s, it clashed with the House. From then on, it really did more than revise laws that were given to it from the House. And look at this one, Proclamation of Sovereignty over Aotearoa, New Zealand. The New Zealand Company in Port Nicholson set up its own form of self-government in March. William Hobson was alerted to this by a ship's captain, and on 21st of May 1840, Hobson was furious. These are from papers past and from the archives. From the Gazette. You can go to the Gazette or to the papers past, but that one there is from the Archives New Zealand. So you can go to any of those websites and you'll find things like this. It's quite interesting when you have a look around. So now you know that a private for-profit company governs New Zealand. What should you do? Well, the best thing I can suggest is that you learn your status. If you don't know what your status is and what your rights are, then you don't have any. And this is what they rely on. So we'll learn our status first. Now, we know that we're living, and we know that the birth certificate is an entity or it's dead. It's just a title. And we have possession of our body. We don't have possession of the title, but we could perhaps get that if we tried. So on the left-hand side, if you look on your printout, or in America it's the live birth certificate, you will find that you have been given a name on there, John Henry, but there is no father's name on that. There is no surname. Now, if you look on your driver's licenses, you'll see that they don't hide this fact. They have two photos there. One is living, one is dead, and you'll find that the names are separated. One line you will have the living, the next line you will have the dead. It's the same in your passports. They don't hide it from you, but because we didn't know, we believed it to be the truth. So we believed we were Doe, John Doe being a dead body. When a dead body arrives at the morgue and they don't know the name of the person, it's called a John Doe. Okay, Doe is a trust. If you go back to the 1666 Sedekei Act, you will see that is when they set up the trusts for the dead. And they insure us for life, and they trade that document the whole time. All of these people trade it. Now, if we know our status in the public world, we are the beneficiary of that trust. But it does change. Our status does change. John Henry can make decisions. Doe needs agents or administrators because they're administering the deceased estates. So John Henry can make decisions. Doe cannot. Now, on this side, the agents, some of the agents, these are only a few, the banks, the Inland Revenue, WINS, courts, those are some of the agents that need to make money for those trusts that are trading. And so what they do is they present a bill to John Henry, and he thinks because it's got his name there, John Henry Doe, that he has to pay it. Okay, but when agents act, our status changes. So we're no longer a beneficiary when we receive a bill from one of these agents. What they're trying to do is trick us into believing that we're John Henry Doe, not John Henry. But if we do use the separation, then John Henry becomes the principal and they are an agent. Now, under the agent-principal relationship, the principal has the highest rights. So if you ask the right questions or if you write letters, then the principal can get the agent to go away. What the agent is trying to do is make us trustee by accepting that surname or accepting the father's name. And the good book says, thou shalt not take thy father's name in vain. So if you do, you become the trustee. The moment you take the father's name in vain, you become the trustee of that trust. And the rule is, the trustee always pays. Now, agents need our consent, so we have to be very aware. Now, if you go to the police website, and you will see a tab on the website called About Us, then this meme will come up. And it says there, sorry about the quality, it's not the greatest, but they police by consent. So please just take a screenshot and print that out, laminate it, and keep it with you at all times in case you happen to have an encounter with one of our agents. Just remember that you are the principal when you meet an agent. But because we don't know our rights, agents fool us into paying, and if they do, they receive a commission. Solicitors are the worst. They trick us into believing that we need a lawyer. We don't need a lawyer. We don't need them at all, folks. Lawyers say we need to represent you, but they don't tell you represent is two words. Represent. Okay, so they represent you as the fiction to the courts. You do not need to use a solicitor in any business transaction, any transaction at all. You have the right, and the Bible tells you, go to thine brother quickly, lest you be taken before the judge. So whenever you have a dispute, go to thy brother and deal it out in private. Do not go to a lawyer. The quicker we put these leeches out of business, the better. Now, the courts cannot compel performance. They cannot force you to do anything. I cannot force you to do anything. You cannot force someone else to do anything. But this is what they try. They will use the F words on us. Agents will use force and fear. If they force us to sign anything, sign under duress. If you sign under duress, it's null and void. Everything signed under duress, or anything in fraud, is fraud ab initio, from the beginning. If you sign normally, you become the trustee, or you give the judge jurisdiction. So sign under duress, they do not have jurisdiction then. Okay, now we're going to finally wrap up here with the 8 parts of a lawful contract. Parties competent to contract. The parties to a contract should be competent, being of the age of majority, consent, of sound mind, and not disqualified from contracting by any law to which he or she is subject. A flaw in capacity may be due to minority or underage, lunacy, idiocracy, drunkenness, or status. Now here we go. The status of the parties should be of like kind, being artificial legal person and artificial legal person, or living man, woman, and living man, woman, allowing 2 or more parties but never a mixture of these kinds. So the courts can only deal with fictions. So that's why when you go to court, they can never see a living man or woman. They can only deal with dead artificial legal persons. So if you realize this, but stop this and go through it, because once you understand that the courts can only deal with dead entities, living men and living women can interact with each other. Free and genuine consent. The consent of the parties to the agreement must be free and genuine. The consent of the parties should not be obtained by misrepresentation, fraud, undue influence, coercion, or mistakes. Okay, they cannot. You've got to have genuine consent. They must also give you full disclosure, which the courts could never ever do, because they would have to disclose that they were only prosecuting an entity. The courts can never ever give you full disclosure. So, if we're dealing man on man, then we must give full disclosure. Sufficient consideration. Now, whenever we get conned into a contract by Inland Revenue, the courts, or police, or that, they never give consideration. So that straight away, a contract cannot be enforced if sufficient consideration has not been given. Certainty of terms. The terms and conditions of the contract must be fully disclosed and agreed upon, and must be certain and fixed, not variable as with interest rates. Now, if you have a clause in your loan agreement that your interest rate can be varied from time to time, then that's okay. But if you don't have that in your agreement, whenever they come to try and put up the interest rates, they're trying to renegotiate the contract. So when they try to renegotiate the contract, you say, no, I'm quite happy with my original contract, thank you. And not much they can do. Meeting of the minds, okay. A meeting of the minds, can a piece of paper ever have a meeting of the minds with a man and a woman? No. A meeting of the minds can only occur between like kinds and status, man, woman, not with legal persons. So all contracts that this fictional corporation presents to us, there is no meeting of the minds. Therefore, any contract or contractual agreement you have with them is null and void. It's fraud ab initio, fraud from the beginning. Signature or autographs. Written contracts between artificial legal persons must carry the wet ink signatures of the parties, because a wet ink signature is an accommodation from a living man or woman, declared or not. Written contracts between sentient beings must carry the wet ink autographs of the parties and or living identifications such as a thumbprint. Living status is recognized by a thumbprint, or more often by an unambiguous declaration with the autograph, such as authorized agents. Okay, whereas a corporation would normally use a seal. But if you have a wet ink signature for the corporation, then it is an accommodation. Corporations can and do use a seal. All government departments use seals. I preempted myself there. Privity of contract. A contract exists only between the parties. No third party can obtain rights contained within a contract or buy or sell a contract without the express permission of the original parties. So that cuts out all lawyers, that cuts out all Bay Corp and debt agencies who come, who buy a debt and then try and force you. You think that you have to pay it to a debt collection agency. You do not. You must write to them and ask them about privity of contract. And if you ask them that, you blow them straight out of the water. Okay, cuts Bay Corp, debt collection agencies, councils, lawyers, cuts them right out of the equation. Okay, that will be the end for now, and I do apologise to the people at the seminar down in Whakatane. I hope you enjoy this. We haven't quite finished. We've still got a little bit to go. The public is an entity called a legal fiction. The private is a man, woman. Public is run by administrators. So this is knowing your status. Civil is private between men who contract or sue. And if you act as a corporation, you will pay the price. So just be aware of your status, be aware of who you are, and be aware of your rights, and you should be able to navigate this jungle. Good luck out there.